we had a post asking what you wanted to hear this week in terms of top headlines, and someone suggested and wanted us to talk about, is Texas still a national championship contender? Texas has one loss on the season, one conference loss against a top Georgia team. They won this week against Vandy, and so they want to know, is Texas still a national championship contender?
Yeah, and I'm going to start out with maybe some negative before I get to the positive here. And thanks to the viewers for submitting the question. And I think it's a good point to bring up, especially, after a win, looking at box score, counting the dub. Yeah, it's like Texas is moving on, one more win in the column, but they didn't look as strong as they maybe could. Quinn Ewers right now in the last 3 games, 4 picks and 2 fumbles. I mentioned it in the earlier segment, but he has the lowest depth of target from P4 quarterbacks. He's not playing super confident. And unless they beat Texas A&M, this Texas team might not finish with a win over a ranked opponent. That's kind of their last opportunity to get that finishes ranked. So the team doesn't have the resume right now to prove that they're a national championship contender, and they haven't played the style of ball yet to prove that. Although I think that they have every piece in place to make that. I mean, how are you feeling when you look at the team up to this point?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a really good point. Their stats are off the charts, and so 7-1, 3-1 in conference. This is the number 1 pass defense in the country. Yep. I think where they are looking for areas to improve is the turnover issues with Quinn Ewers, 6 on the year, 4 of the last 2 games. But if the season was to end today, just based upon the rankings, not necessarily taking into consideration the full playoff format, they're a 5 seed. They'd play Boise State, and they'd most likely play BYU in the second round. So those 2 rounds get you to the semifinals. You're a game away from the national championship. Do I think Texas is a national championship contender? Absolutely. I think they are in the crop of teams like Tennessee, LSU, and I think they're on a similar or same level as A&M. Their resume might not necessarily prove it, but I think with the way they've won against the opponents they have played has proved to me that they can compete in those type of games. Just from what I've seen from Texas.
Yeah. And again, I feel like I keep prefacing with negative things. I mean, if they lose to A&M, right, and let's say that Alabama wins out, to me, Texas' resume doesn't necessarily say that they're a playoff contender with Georgia, A&M, and I might even put Alabama and Tennessee up there above Texas if they lose to A&M, just because, these teams, Alabama and Tennessee, haven't gotten beat up. This Texas team got beat up to Georgia. Now, if I'm looking at the current 12 team, like you were saying, where they would be in that, who am I taking over Texas right now? Georgia, Oregon, Ohio State, maybe are the only 3 that I'm taking over them, but I think Texas could win any of those games.
Absolutely.
I think Texas is better than Penn State. I think they're better than Miami, for sure. I think they're better than Tennessee, better than Notre Dame, better than BYU, Boise State, Iowa State. I like this Texas team better than them in any given Saturday. This Texas team, if they can win, if they can beat A&M, and even if they lose that game, I still think that they might be punching a ticket.
Right.
They're a contender just on the fact of the pieces and the coaching that they have.
Yeah. I think this schedule kind of warrants wanting more style points. We're just getting into the SEC schedule. They beat Mississippi State. They lost to Georgia. They beat Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's good. Mississippi State's not good. Georgia is good. All things considered, they're kind of like, what are we? But we know they're good. We just rattled off a ton of national teams that we believe they're better than. We want to see more from them with this schedule. But if I'm putting my money on it, yeah, I'm picking Texas over a lot of teams. And I 100% think they're a national championship contender. I think, Vanderbilt is a good team and they've proven they're good. This defense, all things considered statistically, has proven it's top 5 in the nation. You got guys like Jahdae Bird and Anthony Hill, Anthony Hill making a huge contribution when it comes to that defense and making stops against Vanderbilt. And Jahdae Bird got in a pick last game, got 3 on the year leading the team. And so this defense is very strong. Offense is showing some liability. It's not being heavily discussed. We'll see what that means going forward. I'm not saying Arch is the answer, but something does need to change from a quarterback performance perspective, because when they start playing more competitive teams, they're not going to be able to be afforded those luxuries of recovering. They had 2 turnovers against Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt wasn't able to capitalize. That might not happen if you're playing a well-coached Boise, potentially if you're the 5 and the 12, or if you're playing a well-coached Oregon. Say Oregon doesn't win their conference championship and you play Oregon in the second round. Those are the blockers to a championship contender, not a playoff spot. And so that is, to me, the negativity or the areas of concern for Texas.
Yeah. And if you're Texas, I think it's right to be asking these questions. I think you're looking at the future of the team, and your goal was to make the national championship game and win it when looking at your roster this year. If 3 gets more comfortable out there, I think he's the quarterback for the team. He just needs to open up a little bit more, show some more comfortability and confidence. I mean, we saw what A&M did to Nussmeier last week. That's your next real big test this year to finish out the season is A&M. So use in the weeks to come to show that you are a team that can compete in that game, win that game, get a good spot in the SEC championship game. There are a lot of teams, if you are another SEC team, that you would rather play than Texas in that game. So for writing this question in, yeah, you're still a national championship contender. Do I think that it's the strongest Texas team that they could be at this moment? No, but there's a lot of weeks to happen still to improve.
Yeah, like I'm gonna put you on the spot. So this Texas team right now versus the Texas team that beat Bama last year, who do you like better?
I like this team better.
Defense
I think I like
better.
this team better. Yeah,
defense is better.
Yeah. I think the wide receiver room is wide open. I think the running back play is less. The receiving is kind of about equal, I would say. Some people may argue that last year was better. I don't know.
It's hard to replace Jonathan. It's hard to replace Jonathan Brooks at running back. I mean, he's pretty solid, and Bijan the year before. So, I mean, 2 all Big 12 top guys.
I would have taken this team just expecting yours to continue to develop.
Yep, 100%. And so we think they're still national championship contenders. A little bit humbled there against Georgia, and I didn't say it earlier. They did beat Oklahoma, so that was another SEC win for them. In addition to Mississippi State, in addition to Vanderbilt, so 3-1 in conference. It all makes sense, and so we'll see how the rest of the season plays out. It was a great question, and we love to hear more questions like this from our new listeners, our recurring listeners as well.